The world changes at 6:30 a.m., not with noise, not with warning. It happens in a single instant, when ordinary morning light is replaced by something brighter, harsher, and wrong. A flash that does not behave like sunlight. A white surge that overwhelms the horizon and briefly erases depth, shadow, and meaning. For a fraction of a second, the day itself is outshined. Those closest never understand what they're seeing. There is no time for recognition, no space for fear. Their final moment is not pain, but brightness. Farther away, the world pauses. Coffee machines continue to drip. Alarm clocks keep ringing. Traffic lights remain green. The routines of millions persist. Unaware they are already obsolete. Phones vibrate almost simultaneously, not with clarity, but with unfinished alerts. Screens light up, then freeze. Messages arrive without context. Then the shockwave comes, not as an explosion, but as pressure, a deep, rolling force that bends glass without breaking it. Buildings shudder. Walls hum. The ground trembles just enough to make people look up from tables, desks, and sidewalks. Somewhere, a car alarm begins to scream and does not stop. Silence follows. It is not the silence of calm. It is the silence of interruption. The kind that feels like time has missed a step. And in that silence, something irreversible begins. At the edge of visibility, a new shape forms against the sky. Not fire, motion, a rising column that climbs faster than weather, faster than reason. It grows upward with deliberate speed, folding into itself, widening, darkening. A second horizon appears where none should exist. Shadows sharpen unnaturally. Reflected light paints buildings in pale heat. Windows glow without flames. Dust lifts from streets that have not yet been damaged. Cities closest to the detonation begin to vanish in stages. First the outlines blur. Then landmarks dissolve into shifting gray. Structures engineered to last centuries fold inward like paper models. Steel bends. Concrete fractures. Streets split along invisible seams. But beyond that radius, life continues in fragments. People step outside, confused by the brightness. Some raise their phones, instinctively recording something they do not yet understand. Others stand still, frozen mid-step, waiting for an explanation that does not come. Emergency sirens activate unevenly. In some districts, they wail immediately. In others, they lag behind the event, their delay more frightening than their sound. Radios crackle to life, voices tight, carefully paced, already choosing words that will be analyzed for decades. This is not a drill. The sentence lands heavily, then repeats. Cell networks strain under sudden demand. Calls fail. Messages send without delivering. Screens refresh endlessly. The invisible infrastructure that binds society together begins to stretch beyond its limits. A national heartbeat accelerates, then stutters. Television broadcasts interrupt scheduled programming. Anchors appear composed, but their pauses grow longer. They reread lines. They avoid naming what has happened too quickly, as if delay might soften reality. Language itself hesitates. The word nuclear hangs unspoken. Above ground zero, the plume continues to rise. Within it, pulverized earth, glass, steel, and ash swirl together, pulled upward into a towering column. Millions of particles lifted into the atmosphere, invisible in their danger, indifferent to borders or intent. Fallout has already begun, though few recognize it yet. Phones vibrate again. New instructions appear. Shelter immediately. Interior rooms. Stay away from windows. The guidance is correct, but incomplete. Half the population hesitates, unsure whether staying or moving is safer. Some pack bags with no destination. Others open car doors, convinced distance equals survival. Confusion becomes its own hazard. Traffic thickens without accidents. Intersections clog as drivers slow, stare, and stop. Horns blare, then fade. A single stalled vehicle creates paralysis. Trains pause between stations. Airports freeze mid-motion. Runways sit full and silent. Aircraft grounded without explanation. The world's movement systems begin to stiffen. Power grids flicker. Some neighborhoods fall dark instantly. Others remain brightly lit, unaware how fragile that brightness has become. Elevators stop between floors. Automatic doors fail half open. The hum of electricity grows uneven. Inside homes, families gather around radios, around screens, around silence. The absence of reliable information feels heavier than the news itself. Words like potentially multiple strikes and radiological threat settle into everyday conversation within minutes. A vocabulary once reserved for history books becomes immediate. Outside, birds scatter in erratic patterns, responding to pressure waves humans cannot feel. Pets grow restless. Instinct outruns comprehension. Nature senses the shift before society names it. Some people look to the sky for answers. The sky does not respond. By the end of the first 30 minutes, panic has not yet arrived fully. What exists instead is anticipation. A creeping awareness that the systems designed to protect daily life are struggling to explain what has happened. Grocery stores fill too quickly. Shelves empty unevenly, not from hunger, but from fear of absence. Gas stations see lines form without announcements. Pharmacies lock doors early. Supermarkets hesitate, then close, try and prevent crowds they no longer trust to remain calm. Trust begins to thin. Government buildings move into restricted modes. Communications between leaders accelerate behind closed doors. Strategic commands verify information with voices trained to remain steady under unimaginable pressure. Decisions are made quietly, without public acknowledgement. The public feels only the echo of those decisions. By 7 a.m., the first hour is not yet complete, but the world that existed before 6:17 no longer feels accessible. The assumption of safety, the unspoken belief that someone, somewhere, is in control, has cracked. Lights are still on in many places. Water still runs. The sun still shines. But beneath that thin layer of normalcy, something fundamental has shifted. The first hour is still unfolding. And whatever comes next, by 7 a.m., the event has a name but no shape. Official statements arrive carefully measured, stripped of emotion, built to slow panic rather than explain reality. Words like assessment, verification, and ongoing evaluation repeat across every channel. They confirm what people already know while avoiding what they fear most. No one says how many. No one says what comes next. The pause is deliberate. It feels like withholding oxygen. Behind sealed doors, systems built for unthinkable moments come alive. Secure lines open. Commands move downward through rigid hierarchies. Military aircraft change status without announcement. Submarines adjust depth and position far from public awareness. None of this is visible. Yet the absence of civilian information makes the invisible feel enormous. Airports are the first public spaces to freeze completely. Departure boards flicker, then fill with delays that never update. Flights already taxiing stop without explanation. Passengers remain seated inside aircraft, phones glowing uselessly in dim cabins. Others are trapped in terminals, watching security lines dissolve into clusters of silent confusion. No one is told to leave. No one is allowed to fly. The sky belongs to something else now. Cell networks begin to fracture under the weight of simultaneous reaching. Calls connect, then drop. Messages arrive hours late or not at all. Internet speeds collapse into fragments. Government websites fail to load. Emergency pages crash under traffic meant to save lives. Silence spreads digitally before it spreads physically. On highways, the breakdown is slower, more human. Traffic thickens without accidents, then locks entirely. Drivers roll down windows, listening for sirens that offer no direction. Navigation apps reroute endlessly, unable to account for roads that still exist but no longer function. Some abandoned vehicles in the middle of lanes, choosing familiarity over motion. The transportation grid was built for efficiency, not fear. By 7:45 a.m., grocery stores become pressure points. Not riots, not chaos. Just too many people moving too quickly with the same unspoken thought. Shelves empty selectively. Water, canned food, batteries, items associated with waiting. Cash registers slow as payment systems stutter. Employees stop restocking. Doors close early without explanation. The idea of abundance evaporates. Gas stations follow. Pumps lock. Digital price signs freeze mid-update. Lines curl around blocks. Engines idling. Fuel burning while drivers argue silently with dashboards that no longer promise range. Arguments break out without voices raised. Frustration has not become violence yet, but it is learning how. Hospitals activate protocols designed for disasters that arrive suddenly, not ones that hover. Non-essential procedures are canceled. Staff are called in, though many cannot reach the buildings they serve. Emergency rooms prepare for casualties that have not arrived and may never arrive here. Resources are allocated without knowing where the true demand will be. Medicine becomes a guessing game. Police and emergency services drown in calls that are not crimes. Smoke mistaken for secondary strikes. Tremors mistaken for explosions. Power outages mistaken for attacks. Dispatchers repeat the same phrases until their voices flatten. Help is requested faster than it can be given. Social platforms fill the vacuum with speculation. Grainy images circulate without timestamps. Old footage resurfaces labeled as current. Anonymous accounts predict retaliation within minutes, then seconds. The truth becomes indistinguishable from fear. Each refresh deepens uncertainty. People stop looking for confirmation. They look for reassurance. By 8:30 a.m., the psychological shift becomes visible. Offices empty. Workdays dissolve without formal dismissal. Elevators stop between floors as buildings switch to emergency power. The rhythm of cities slows unnaturally. The familiar hum of commerce fades into an uneven quiet broken only by sirens and distant aircraft. The national heartbeat begins to slow. Children are pulled from schools early. Parents speak in tones they have never used before. Explanations are simplified beyond accuracy. Safety becomes a word without definition. Windows are covered. Interior rooms fill. Radios are turned up, then down, as repetition replaces clarity. Trust in instruction weakens. Authorities urge people to stay indoors. Many comply. Others move anyway, driven by the instinct that motion equals survival. Highways jam again, this time with purpose. Rural roads fill with vehicles heading nowhere specific. The irony is silent and cruel. In the early phase, movement increases risk, not safety. Fear rarely chooses correctly. By 9 a.m., power becomes unreliable. Some neighborhoods lose electricity entirely. Others flicker, lights dimming and brightening like uncertain thoughts. Generators start, then stop as fuel is rationed. The sound of electricity becomes noticeable only when it disappears. Darkness feels closer, even in daylight. Radios crackle with emergency tones that repeat without updates. Television anchors maintain composure, but their eyes betray the strain. They speak slower now, aware that every word shapes behavior. They avoid speculation. They cannot avoid implication. Phrases like national security and defensive posture slip into public language. By 9:30 a.m., the question is no longer whether the world has changed. It is whether it will stabilize or continue to fracture. Systems still function, but only partially. Order still exists, but it feels borrowed. The day is not over. The crisis has not peaked, and the night is approaching with no promise of light. By 9:30 a.m., the decisions have moved beyond public language. Behind reinforced walls and deep underground, rooms glow with quiet intensity. Maps pulse with data that never reaches civilian screens. Timelines shorten. Options narrow. Authorization codes are verified, then verified again. Submarines adjust course beneath oceans that appear calm from above. Air defense networks remain awake, watching skies that offer no reassurance. None of this is announced. The absence itself becomes information. Above ground, the visible world begins to thin. Office towers empty completely. Elevators freeze between floors and are left that way. Production lines stop mid-cycle. Financial markets suspend activity without ceremony. Numbers that once defined stability lose meaning in a single morning. Progress pauses without permission. By late morning, the infrastructure that once promised continuity now feels provisional. Power returns in some districts only to fail again hours later. Water pressure fluctuates. Data centers reroute traffic endlessly, try and maintain a sense of connection that is already slipping away. The internet becomes patchwork, whole regions going dark while others remain artificially loud. Silence spreads unevenly. Hospitals face decisions without guidance. Prepare for casualties that may arrive by wind rather than vehicle, or conserve resources for a future that has no timetable. Medical staff move constantly, not because there is action to take, but because stopping feels dangerous. Motion becomes a defense against dread. Outside, cities lose their familiar soundscape. Traffic noise fades. Construction halts. Sirens become sporadic rather than constant. In their place, an unnatural quiet settles, broken only by the low hum of generators and the occasional helicopter passing overhead without destination. The sky feels watched. As afternoon approaches, the emotional center of gravity shifts again. Fear, once sharp and immediate, becomes heavy and sustained. The adrenaline of the morning drains away, leaving exhaustion in its place. People stop refreshing feeds every minute, not because answers arrive, but because none do. Uncertainty becomes normalized. By late afternoon, grocery stores and gas stations are fully closed. Not looted, closed, locked against panic rather than violence. Supply chains are discussed in briefings, but not in public. Trucks exist, but routes do not. Drivers wait for instructions that have not been written yet. The idea of tomorrow feels fragile. As daylight fades, the power grid makes its final compromises. Some cities retain partial illumination. Others slip fully into darkness. Streetlights blink out block by block. Skylines that once defined identity dissolve into silhouettes. The glow that once reached clouds is gone. Night arrives unevenly. In rural regions, the darkness feels ancient. In cities, it feels wrong. People stand at windows, looking out at streets that no longer reflect light. Without electricity, time loses its markers. Phones conserve battery. Conversations lower. Radios become communal objects passed between hands. Connection is reduced to voice and proximity. When broadcasts do break through, they carry little new information. Statements are repeated. Emergency tone cycle. Silence fills the gaps. The lack of updates becomes more frightening than bad news would have been. Rumors resurface quietly, no longer shouted, just shared. The night deepens. By the time midnight passes, the world has not ended. That realization settles heavily. The absence of immediate annihilation brings no relief. Instead, it introduces a more complex fear. This is not a single moment of destruction. This is a process, a long one. Somewhere far away, ash continues to drift. Winds carry particles across borders without acknowledging politics. Scientists track patterns humans cannot see. Models run constantly, adjusting predictions that no one wants finalized. Fallout does not announce itself. The first morning after arrives with cold, indifferent light. The sun rises exactly as it always has. Streets remain standing. Buildings still cast shadows. For a brief moment, the illusion of normalcy almost returns. Then the silence asserts itself again. Birds move cautiously. Vehicles remain parked. No rush hour forms. Radios hum softly, repeating yesterday's warnings. People step outside not to leave, but to look. The horizon feels farther away than it should. The world looks intact. It is not. A collective understanding settles without discussion. This is not an emergency to be resolved. This is a threshold crossed. The first hour was not the catastrophe itself. It was the moment the future fractured. What comes next will not arrive with a flash. It will arrive through shortages, decisions, weather patterns, and patience tested beyond design. Through trust rebuilt slowly or lost completely. Through choices made under pressure, far from cameras. History will record the detonation, but humanity will remember the silence that followed. The moment when the familiar world did not end violently, but quietly stepped aside. And in that quiet, everything that remains must now learn how to survive.